Hi Shannon, hi, how are you? I hope you're well. Okay, awesome. Right. So let's let's look at what's going on over here. Um Fundamentally, we're talking about overheads, right? Just make sure this pen is always starts off this way, not working. Here we are. See if it'll come alive. Here we are. So fundamentally we are talking about um just kind of fundamentally we're talking about overheads. Now, I'm sure, I don't know what depth you've talked about overheads, but the issue here is that um, normally, when we're not talking about overheads, we know what the actual, well, overhead costs. If they're not overhead costs, the costs are, if you like, direct. So the issue here is that I'm making certain product, or I have a certain division or a certain area, for example, and I know what the fixed the direct, the actual costs are. So I might be making product A, product B, and in the process of making product A and product B, so I'll have some direct materials, direct labor. That could be £5, and that could be £4, that could be £7, and that could be £8. But because A and B share some sort of space, if you like, and as a result, we have some shared overhead costs. So they could be light and heat, rent, canteen, accounting. It really doesn't matter what that overhead cost is. But what I need you to sort of get your thinking around is that, well, ultimately, I need to, in the end, get a price figure for product A and B. So what I mean by that? Well, ultimately, I'm trying to sell product A and B. So if someone says to me, oh, Ian, how much does product A cost? Well, I'm going to struggle because, well, imagine I had a total overhead of £10,000, and I know this is what it costs to make a unit of A, and this is the labor that goes into a unit of A, and this is what goes into a unit of B, and this is what goes into unit B. I need to kind of think, well, I want to make sure that when I price this thing, I'm able to cover these costs. So one way of doing it is to sort of assume that, okay, you know what, how many units of A and B did we make? So for example, if we made last year, if we think, okay, you know what, we're going to make 500 units of A and we're going to make 500 units of B, we could argue then that this £1,000 of overheads is spread against over, it's spread over these two costs. So for example, we could argue then you have 10,000 spread over total units of 1,000, giving you £10 a unit. So you could argue that, quite arbitrary, we don't know for sure, but we could say, well, therefore, if you like, based on last year, we made 500 of A last year, 500 of B last year, and that generated, or that drove, this overhead of 10,000. So you could argue that each of these are £10 a unit, right? Because I'm trying to get a unit cost. That's the issue here. So now I know that this is 5 plus 4 plus 10. So in a way, I could assume that this is £19. Oops, sorry, where's my pen going? I could assume that this is £19, and I can also assume 7 plus 8, 15, that this is £25. So really, this is an experiment in trying to map overheads. So ignore all this fixed cost business now. This is really an experiment. This task 1.4 is an experiment in trying to map overheads to particular divisions or particular units. How we do that requires some element of judgment. So let's come back to your question now. Here we are. So we're in task 4, and let's see what we have in front of us. Let's see what we have. Oops. Oh, right. Okay, that's gone up again. Oops, 1 second. Sorry. Let's see what we have. Okay, great. So task 1.4, we have this scenario here that it says here that you have this business called Hemingway with the following departments: warehouse, manufacturing, sales, and accounting. So the argument here is that these are the departments for now, that we have. We don't know so much about the direct costs in these departments, well, at least if there are any, but the key point is that we need to find a way to kind of get these overheads into these departments. So we know we have a warehouse department, and sometimes some departments just have their own specific. So think of it like this. Some departments will have, imagine I divided this into 4 parts. I have sales, accounting, warehouse, and manufacturing. Some departments will have their own specific allocated, I use that word carefully, allocated overheads, because those costs are in that department and nowhere else. But sometimes we might share a space, which is like what you see right here. So you might just have one rental charge for all these 4 departments, and you'll have to apportion. You'll have to apportion that rental charge. All these 4 departments, if you like, might also share machinery. You might have to apportion depreciation. So it's just about trying to almost use judgment to decide how I'm going to get the overhead into that department. And when I have the overheads in a department, then I will then think about how I can move overheads into the departments that actually make products, because you see, accounting don't sell any products. So ultimately, we're trying to get all the costs into the departments that actually make products. So let's look at what we have. It says here that the budgeted overheads are treated as fixed costs. The monthly budgeted overheads are as follows. So you have depreciation, 20,000. Okay, great. So now, just looking at depreciation, I have this cost of 20,000. It's quite general for now. So this might be to do with maybe, just depreciation in general, total depreciation. So you could have argued that, Oyen, well, what they could do is calculate depreciation in each department. Why are they doing it this way? That's true. That's one way to do it. But they haven't. What they've sort of said is they've kept a general type of depreciation charge. So the argument is, well, how do I split this depreciation charge? Because obviously I'm trying to make sure I can get the overhead costs into the different departments. Also, just to know whether, so that we can even judge those departments and see how responsible they are about managing their costs. So if you like, the question here is, well, how am I going to split this 20,000? That's the first problem. And then I'll look at rent, 70,000. And I guess because they're all in the same space, I could argue, well, it must be based on who's using depending on the space they're occupying. I could apportion it that way. So with depreciation, we tend to sort of say, well, generally, the higher the non-current assets in your department, the higher the depreciation charge. Well, it must be, generally, that if you're in the warehouse, so the warehouse guys have 100 million pounds worth of machines, and the manufacturing guys have 800 million pounds worth of machines. And these guys have, sales have 40, and these guys have 60. So that as a portion, which is really ratios, when I say ratios, what we could do is we know the total is 100, 1,000, a million if you like. So it means that 100 of this is driving or is causing, well, when I say 100 of this, if I want to work out my depreciation for warehouse, I will say 100 over a million times 20. Manufacturing, I will say 800 over a million times 20,000. For my sales, I will say 40 over a million times 20,000. And for my accounting, I will say 60 over 1,000, 20,000. I've literally broken up the 20,000, or apportioned, if you like, the 20,000 between the 4 areas according to the carrying value of the non-current assets. That's what we've done. That's the first one. With rent, well, I need to split up 70,000. So what base, I guess that's the question. What base am I going to use to split it up? And I guess floor space makes sense. So I can say, well, based on floor space for warehouse, I'm going to have 20 over 100. I picked it up from here, 20, and that's the 100. 20 over 100 times the total of 70,000. Manufacturing, I will say 55 over 100. For sales, I will say 15 over 100 times 70,000. And for accounting, I will say 10 over 100 times 70,000. So I've now split up my rent. Then it says other property overheads. So I guess this is a clue. You could argue it's really, I mean, these are the only bases you have for the value of the assets. You probably would have to go with floor space, and you can then, what you will end up doing is splitting up this again based on the floor space, because it's probably as close as you can get. Remember, we're just almost looking for estimates or guesstimates. So for example, a warehouse again will be 20 over 100 times 25,000. Manufacturing will be 55 over 100 times 25,000. Sales will be 15 over 100 times 25,000. And accounting will be 10 over 100 times 25,000. And that's how I would split it. Now look at these. These are quite clear. It tells you straight away, well, for the staff cost warehouse, it's 5,600. 5,600 is going straight in. I'm just going to go in and just chuck that in there. I'm just going to go in and do the same thing for manufacturing. I'm going to do the same thing for sales. Straight. So that's what we call an allocation. I know straight away. The sales staff costs, they only work in sales. The warehouse guys only. So you can see what I'm trying to do is map in as all the costs as I can, as efficiently or correctly as possible. And the same for accounting. Straight into accounting. Whoops. Straight into accounting. The specific overheads just for accounting. So that goes into accounting as well. So let's, and then we can talk about the other bit about kind of resplitting the rest of the stuff. And let's put that in there into our table. I'll come and talk about this in a second, but let's kind of just put everything into our table first. So that's your first task. Just the table first, and then let's see. So you can see here where it says depreciation. The process of splitting it would be based on the machinery, right? And then split it up, using those those percentages, right? So I did that was the very first thing I did over here, this business over here of 100 over 1,800, 40, and then 60 times 20,000. And if you do that, so this 100 over this times, if you like, this is a tenth, isn't it? A tenth of this is 2,000. Right, this is 2,000, and this is 16,000, and this is 800, and this is 1,200. So what do? I literally come in here and just do that first of all. Machinery, and I will have here 2,000, 16. Second, my pen is running away with me again. 16,000. 800 and 1,000, and just add it up, and that gives you 20,000. With rent, I said I was going to use floor space, and I literally do just multiply and do what I've just done there. So if I come back to floor space, if I come back to rent, remember I split up rent. Whoops. I split up rent. So rent 70,000. I split it up. Rent, where is this? I think it's further down below. Or is it further up? Right. Oh, here it is. It's in the corner here. So this is, remember, this is what I did with the rent. So here I have 10 based on floor space. I'm saying that based on the percentage occupied of floor space. Right, the percentage occupied of floor space. I'm just looking for a base to just split up this rent between these different departments that you saw me talking about over here, right? That's what I'm doing. The key point is that I need to get them into these different areas. So I'm just judging. They always give you have to make a kind of judgment. So based on that, 10 over, that's 7, isn't it? For that, and you just do this multiplication, and then you come in and chuck your figures in. So doing that gives us answers of, in the warehouse we will have 14, in manufacturing we will have 38,500, here we will have 10,500, here we will have 7,000, and that's a total. Add those together, that will give you 70,000. Property overheads, we used floor space as well, just because, again, It's property, your overhead, so maybe light and heat, and you could probably argue that floor space is what's driving it as well. And when you do that as well, you have 5,000, you will have 13,750, you will have 3,750, you will have 2,500, giving you a total of 25,000. And then your staff costs, we are told what they are, right? Remember, they just tell us. So we put allocated here. So allocated just means you are told. So you don't need to divide anything straight away. Just put your figures in. 5,600, 13,850, 31, 1 second. The pen's gone again. 31,750, 28,100, and that gives you a total of 79,300. And they tell us again that we have these overheads for accounting. They specifically tell us that those are 27,200. So you can see what I'm really trying to do is literally map as much as I can to the different departments. Yes. And just add that through. So if you now add that through, you now have, for warehouse, you have 26,600, you have 82,100, you have 46,800, and you have 66,000. I'm literally just adding down, and that gives you the total of 221,500, right? Yeah, so that's where we are. Great. Whoops. Okay, right. Now, now, you see, here's the thing. The truth is, right, that ultimately, I imagine, right, that the key, these are the key cost centers. When I say the cost centers, products are made here in these two departments. The key point is that we need to we can see that because you can see it says that the total overheads to production centers. So I'm only ever going to be able to transfer or spread these costs over products, warehouse, and manufacturing. No products are made here. Nothing. No products are made here. But I need to make sure I map these costs into the relevant departments where products are made. So they have to give us some guidance on how we're going to reapportion. And it tells us, you can see here it says reapportion accounting. So it's really, when you see this, it means come over here to accounting, and it tells you how you're going to reapportion this. And it's really about looking at the question, and it says, the question tells us how to reapportion accounting. So it says here that apportionment of accounting department overheads, it says give 5% of it to warehouse, 65% of it to manufacturing, and sales 30%. So what this really means is that the accounting department does work for about 5% of the folks in warehouse, 65% of the folks in manufacturing, and 30% of the guys in the sales department. So you just, they're sort of, maybe this might be due to invoicing volumes. So we now need to split up that cost, 5%, 65%, 30%. So if anything, if I guess to help you, what you're really saying is, I need to get rid of this. I need to get rid of this accounting cost. So in a way, you could put something like this, 66,000. You're getting rid of it. You're literally spreading it. Let's put minus, but you're literally now getting rid of it to spread it in that percentage ratio of 65%, 30. What does it say? 65, 5, 65, and 30. So that's what I'm doing. So 5% of that will go to warehouse. So 5% of that comes up here as 3,300. 30% of that comes here at 19,800. And 65% of that comes here as 42,900. That's got rid of now. So literally, that's that gone. That's 66,000 reapportioned. Remember, I'm apportioning because I'm using a base to spread it. Now I have my total for sales, which is now these two things together. You can see that by first reapportioning this, I'll say that again, you can see by first reapportioning this, I now give some to sales, give some to manufacturing, give some to warehouse. Now I have a new total of sales. And it tells me, so basically add these two together. If I add these two together now, I now have 66,600, and it tells me how to reapportion this. It says reapportion them equally between manufacturing and warehouse. So I now take this again, get rid of it and split it equally. 33,300, 33,300. So you can see what I'm trying to do all day is to fundamentally reapportion all these kind of areas that really will not generate any units, because the units will come from warehouse and manufacturing. So now I have a total of 63,200 and 158,300. So here's the thing. Say, for example, I was making, say, 100 units here and 100 units here. Now I can know what the overhead is per unit for each of these different departments. This could have been product A and product B. So now if someone says to me, oh, Oyen, can you deliver some product A for me? Well, I'm just going to assume here the direct material of product A could be 20. The direct labor could have been 15. But now I know that the overhead part of it, I could argue that I made 63,200. Let me just assume this is 1,000 and 1,000, so it's a bit more reasonable. 63,200. So basically, I have an overhead of 63,200 being generated because of 1,000 units. So 1,000 units are driving or causing 63,200. I mean, it's a budget, but at least it's a reference. So 63,200 divided by 1,000 would be 63.2. I mean, this is hypothetical, but I'm just trying to highlight the thinking behind this process. I'm trying to map all the costs into the areas that actually have units to then come up with some kind of pricing strategy. Great stuff. I hope that helps. I'm sure you'll be fine now with that. Cool. Great stuff. Good luck on Friday. Take care. Oh yeah. Bye-bye.